Out of suffering have emerged the strongest souls. The most massive characters are seared with scars. Resilience is born through struggle, and in the end, it leads to triumph and growth. That is a quote by Khalil Gibran. And my guest today is going to talk on resilience, triumph, growth, hope, redemption, and forgiveness. Hi, everybody. I'd love to welcome Rick Houghton. Hi, Rick.
Hi Lois, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Yes, I'm very good, thank you, and thank you for inviting me to have a chat.
I'm so glad you're here. Rick and I go back some years. I think we met in 2008 in the Middle East in Oman. And Rick was fundamental in making some changes in my life, which we can discuss a bit later. But let me tell you a little bit about Rick. After three decades of working across four continents and five countries, Rick found himself exhausted with no clear boundaries between work and life. His roles, ranging from teacher to professional development trainer, has consumed him. It wasn't until deep conversations with a friend that he understood the need for self-care and forgiveness, allowing himself to step back and recharge. In 2022, he made the bold decision to leave teaching and founded Life Solutions. His mission is to help educators and professionals rediscover balance, unlock their potential, and live with emotional, spiritual, and physical well being. Through transformation, he guides individuals toward a life of abundance and peace through forgiveness of self and others.
Well, thank you for
Rick,
the introduction.
that is quite a story, and I'm looking forward to you telling me how you have overcome some of your mistakes, failures, roadblocks. So, where are
Sure.
we going to start?
Well, I think let's start at the exit point and work our way back to what brought me to the exit point.
Okay.
So I had just finished the academic year. I think we had 2 weeks left of the academic year, and then it was off for the summer vacation. And through a series of very difficult um, meetings and students and parents walking into my classroom and telling me how to do my job, I just had had enough. I think it was, as they say, the straw that broke the camel's back. And I walked into the headmaster's office and I just said, "Thank you very much for everything, but I won't be back. I'm leaving today and that's it. I will not be back." And the rest is history. But I think having suffered burnout 3 times in my life and having to restart, you do build a lot of resilience. You build resilience to changes. You safeguard yourself with many walls that are actually needed and necessary, actually. You know, they say that you shouldn't build walls around yourself, that you should be out there exposed. I don't believe that. I think that we need to have some form of security that protects our inner self. And that's what I did every time. Give you some examples. One of the examples was I was held up in my office at a school that I taught at. It was late afternoon, about 5 o'clock, and two men walked into my office, closed the door, and cocked their guns. And the one put the gun in my face, and the other moved to stand behind me and put the gun in my neck. And during the encounter, it wasn't clear what they wanted. So um, I managed to answer a phone call, which was I told him, if you don't let me answer the phone, it's going to create a bit of a problem, and then you'll have a bigger mess than I will. You know, because there are people outside waiting to see me, and it's a party line to the kitchen and to the other offices in the in the building, so you need to let me answer the phone. I answered the phone casually, calmly, put down the phone. They then took the money box, my cell phone, and I walked away with my life. And um, I think my dignity a little bit exposed, as it were, because I was terribly, all I could think of was just don't get killed, don't get shot, just stay alive. And I think that's where the resilience came in, because I knew I had to stay alive because outside were people counting on me. Anyway, brings me to another point. And at that moment, I was fearful. I couldn't do anything. I froze. And when I unfroze, I managed to go through a number of weeks of just being frozen, not dealing with the trauma, not dealing with the pain, not dealing with anything. And a friend said to me, let's go and have a coffee one afternoon. So we went to have a coffee, and the coffee turned into a very long conversation. And it was during that time that I managed to break down and release all that tension that had been keeping me alive. And then a few years later, um, a very good friend of mine, very close friend of mine, was due to fetch me to take me to the airport to pick up some friends from Cape Town who were flying out to Heliopolis in Egypt. And he never came. And so I managed to get a taxi to his place with another friend. I didn't want to go alone because I didn't know what to expect. And I discovered his body after the murder. And that was quite something to learn how and what people do for vengeance and what they do for money and things. And so with that, I again had another trauma. I couldn't meet new people. I couldn't go out. And Lois, if I had stayed that way, you and I would never, ever have had a conversation. We would never have been on a trajectory where I would have come to know you. And so I'm really glad that my some of my close friends who really cared about me took me aside and coached me, as it were, through this pain, through this trauma. And those are only two of the traumas that I've suffered. I've suffered a fair amount in my life. But I think that's a story for another time. So what makes me me is the fact that, they say when you fall down, get up, dust yourself off, and get going again. And that's me. I haven't got time to sit and play in the dirt and be miserable and so on. I've got to see the more positive side and see that A, I have a purpose in my life, and B, I have destiny. And if those two things are driving me, for sure, I will have resilience because I'm going to protect that notion of my destiny and my purpose. And so when it came to teaching, I had been feeling I wanted to leave. I didn't really want to be in the classroom anymore, although I was effective. I was a good teacher. Um, I had an amazing classroom. It was well prepared. In actual fact, it was the penthouse of the school, as it were. Everybody would come and guests would be shown to my classroom first. And there was always engagement going on in the classroom. And I miss that. Sure, I miss that. But midway through 2018, I discovered I loved teachers. I loved looking after them as a head of department. I loved making sure their well-being was taken care of when everybody else was just ignoring it. And so I felt I needed to work with people who are either leaving teaching or who are going to make changes and stay within teaching, but needed to redefine their passion, redefine their purpose, redefine their well-being. Because believe me, working is not a good idea. And you often invited me for a coffee, and I said, no, I can't because I've got to work. And it sounds like a terrible excuse. And it's not a reality. Actually, it's not a reality, even though when you're in the moment, it seems like a reality. So people need to find their balance. Take a walk on the beach if you live near the sea. Put your feet in the sand. At 5 o'clock, go and sit somewhere with a glass of water or a Coke or something else stronger if you need, and just absorb the sunset. In when was it? 1995. I was down on the beach and in Cape Town, and I saw a young man about to commit suicide. He was just waiting for the right moment and the right tide. And I had this opportunity to actually chat with him and hear his story. And just in that quick, minuscule moment, the universe just said to me, show him the sunset. So I said, please turn around. And he went, what? I said, please turn around. I want you to absorb and look at the sunset. Take it in. And he did, and he burst into tears. And a few days later, I saw him again on the beach, and he was taking everybody else and he was turning them to look at the sunset. And I walked over to him and I said to him, so, dude, what happened? He said, you know that day that you asked me to look at the sunset? I never realized that I was loved so much in that moment by looking at that sunset. And every day is a different sunset. Every day I'm reminded that I'm loved and I have a purpose and I have a destiny.
Sure.
And I just,
I got goosebumps with that story. So Rick, before we go on, there's quite a lot to unpack in what you've already told us. Your two traumatic experiences, horrible, terrible to have to deal with that, to have a gun pointed at your head. I know what it's like to have your life threatened. It is just absolutely dreadful. And then secondly, to find somebody close to you, to find them murdered, again, the trauma is unbelievable. And you mentioned that you froze and you went into a freeze sort of situation for a while.
Mhm.
And I always say it's very important that you do experience those emotions, the sadness, the hatred, the fear, the anger, whatever that emotion is. It is so important that you experience it, because if you don't experience it and you just brush it under the carpet, it comes back to bite you later, which is what happened to me. I didn't deal with the situation. I became an activist, and 2 years later, I landed up with a psychosomatic back problem. And so it's important that you deal with it, but it's even more important that you don't stay there, that you don't live in that moment, that you start taking the steps to come out of it. And you found that with your friend who gave you that coaching and support. And that's so important to find that support.
And you're right, Lois. Support in any trauma is needed. And it's not the support that says, oh, I'm sorry that you went through this. Oh, the empathy must be real. It must almost be like they've lived it with you or they understand your pain. And quite often I've found that there's two people in my life. One is a professional coach, um, and the other is a psychologist. And for me, the coach is the one that's really got me through it all. The psychologist helped me understand the mindset of what went on and why I froze, and could ask questions that were perhaps a little deeper, and a little bit more emotionally motivating to come out of it. But the bottom line of everything that I went through is forgiveness. Until I could forgive myself, I could not forgive the others. And you can go, if I should have, if I had, this would not. No, we can't do that. So you got to forgive yourself and not ask those questions. I'm sorry, I wasn't there for you when you got murdered. I'm sorry that I didn't come earlier to meet with you. Forgive me. Forgive yourself, and then you can forgive others. And it was at that moment when I could forgive others that a number of things changed in my life. Number one, my health changed. I started getting better. I didn't see the world as such a dark, gray place. I saw it with life and light and beauty and colors and and I still today sit and watch the sunset. I try and grab it wherever I can, whether I'm in a swimming pool teaching kids or I'm in my car or I'm on the beach or simply sitting on my balcony at home. And that's the one thing is that you learn to find these new colors and new energy that comes out of those traumas when you forgive and you forgive yourself. And then it's easier, you can forgive others. You know, we are taught in Christian circles to forgive your trespasses as we forgive those who have trespassed against us. And it doesn't mean we have to forget, it doesn't mean we have to become friends with them, but it just means that we actually absolve them and say to them, look, you hurt me. You took away a piece of me and you took away my peace. But it's okay. I have my peace back now, and I need you to have your peace. So go on and live your life, whatever that will be for you. Whether you continue to be a murderer or whether you continue to be a thief or a misogynist or whatever you want to call it, it can give it any name you want. It's their life. They're accountable for it. I'm not, but I'm not going to hold it against you.
Well, you know, it was Rick that advised me to forgive the man that raped me when I was going to his parole hearing. And I can still remember looking at Rick. I looked at you, Rick, and I said, what? You are your tiny cotton picking little mind. There's no ways I can forgive this man that did this terrible thing to attack me like he did and leave me to bleed to death. And I was absolutely just bemused by this idea that I could even contemplate forgiving him. But you fed that idea into my mind, and I ended up forgiving. And it is the most liberating thing you can do is to forgive that transgressor, to just say, it's nothing to do with me anymore. You've got to live your life, as you said. So I thank you. I thank you for
You're
that.
welcome, Lois. And
You certainly.
I remember receiving an email from you where I could feel that freedom in your speech, in your words, that you had done it. And I was so excited. I remember I was not, I was on holiday and it was like I jumped around for joy the whole day because Lois was finally free. And yeah, you showed that every time we met. I could see that freedom and the light in your eyes again, you know.
It made such a difference. Rick, I want to know, have you had a failure, a mistake that you've made that you've had to overcome and pick yourself up from, other than the big traumatic experiences?
Sure. I ran a small company in South Africa, with a friend who I was teaching at the time, and we were going to do catering. He was the chef, and I was the sort of party planner. So during my moments I could work around, he managed to do the work, and I could go and lay out the function and so on. And the business was doing quite well, Lois. And one morning I got a call from a client who said to me, we awfully sorry, but we know we booked breakfast with you and nothing has arrived. And I went, what? What now? Anyway, I tried to contact my friend. I tried to contact his partner, and nothing, vaporized. And at that moment, I realized I had been taken, and it was a huge failure. huge, huge failure because not only did he run away with all the money, he ran away with all the equipment, and I was left with all the debt. And I had been advised by my father to not go into business, to wait, to build it up slowly. And he his words just sort of rang very hard in my ears. However, I managed to pull myself together, and within 3 months, I had paid off all the debt, which was say 6 figures. And I worked really, really hard to pay it all off. I was exhausted. And yeah, it was one of those moments. And then there was another moment where I had I had decided to put a play on, and I knew it was the focal point. It was everything, the buzz. And I had one member come in the audience to watch. And we were at the Grahamstown Festival, and it was, I couldn't believe it. I just went, no, this is not happening. Not happening. And I eventually canceled the rest of the run at the festival because it was just not worth our while. I put in a lot of money to be there, and it was a great, great show. Drove home some amazing moments. It was even recorded for television. They came in and recorded it. So it's kind of a success story on one hand, but a failure on the other hand. You know, for me, a failure is when you don't have anybody arrive at your venue to see the show. Um, and with that, I said, that's it. I'm never doing something again. And a year later, I was back at the festival with a new show and hard work, long hours of working with a bunch of teenagers, and we were sold out. We actually put on extra shows. And I just put it down to don't give up. You know, a failure is not your destiny. A failure is not your purpose. Failure is, yeah, it's a setback, but get up, dust yourself off, and move on. Move closer to where you're meant to be moving towards.
So the words that you came up with for this talk was resilience, and we've spoken about resilience, and then triumph and growth. So obviously you triumphed in the end and you grew from that experience.
For sure. You know, I repeated the festival for another 3 years, 4 years, 4 years, I think. And each year taking a different type of show, sold out before we get there, adding extra shows. So it was really, for me, a growing time. But at the same time, it was an emotional and personal growth. You know, that you need to sit down with yourself, have conversations with yourself that are important, that actually help you to understand you. Because if you don't understand you, you don't understand the world around you. And for me,
Self-awareness.
that has been massive. That has been really, really massive, you know.
So if you had to give somebody some advice or some tips after they've hit some kind of a failure, what would you tell them?
I would say take a piece of paper and journal your mistake, journal your failure, your feelings, your emotions, and then deal with each one separately. But here's the key: find somebody who can listen to you with empathy, with authenticity, because I think there's lots of people who can listen, but they're not authentic. And let them hear your voice and guide you from there. Because, you know, it's been said, a problem shared is halved. You know, it's not a problem at all. You know, I think of my brother who has been dry now for nearly 2 decades. And he will tell you that whilst it's his journey on his own, he cannot have done it without the support of those at AA or those loved ones around him. And it's not an easy journey for anybody to go through failure. It's not an easy thing. And you can sit with your failure and you can brew it like a really good steaming hot pot of coffee, okay? But it will taste like mud when you drink it if you don't deal with it correctly. And I would suggest that people, you write your journal, find somebody who can work with you to just listen. That's all they have to do is listen. They don't have to tell you. The worst is don't give people advice. Because if your advice is wrong, they're just going to blame you for it. So don't look for advice. Look for somebody who will say, wow, no, why do you think that? Or what made you do that in the first place? You know, those kinds of questions drive your growth that you can say, oh, I can see this coming again. I don't want to do that. I don't want to be there. And then, of course, you have to sit down and forgive yourself. I will come back to that again and again because it's in that place of forgiveness that you find the garden of peace. And if I can use the metaphor of the sunset, it's where you will find all of it setting in the warmth of the sun, and it will shine brightly like the moon in the night. And
Oh,
so will you.
that is a beautiful quote we could end this talk with. Rick, thank you so much for sharing so authentically and vulnerably your stories. I'm sure they're going to resonate with a lot of people. And your message of resilience and forgiveness, it's so important. We all need to build that resilience, and we definitely all need to develop that ability to forgive ourselves and others. And you are a coach and you have the ability to listen with that empathy, with that compassion. You have the ability to ask the questions. So how can people reach you?
Okay, so they can find me on my Facebook, which is Rick Houghton. And they can also send me an email at Rick Houghton, rick@rickhoughton.com. They can reach me there. And then through LinkedIn, you can find me at Rick Houghton as well. And then, of course, just look me up. I'm available. If
Okay,
not,
I will
get hold
put
of Lois at Lois's
I
website.
will put I will put your detail in the
Super.
description
Thank you so much. And yeah, reach out. It's a simple, I love to call them coffee chats, not discovery calls. I love to call it a coffee chat. Just come online, have a coffee chat. Let me see how we can help you. Let me listen and you talk, and we can find a way to sort you out.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Rick, for sharing. And everybody, please, you can please subscribe to my channel and please look at the various YouTube videos that have been recorded. There's so much out there. There's so many lessons that you can watch and learn from others. And you can also contact me. I don't call it a coffee chat. I do call it a discovery call. You can you can contact me. So please contact Rick or myself if you wish to find your feet after failure. Thank you,
Thank
Rick.
you. Thank you,